Hi, welcome. I'm Pross Gifford, the Director of Scholarly Programs, and it's my pleasure simply to start this evening off. As you can see, we have a sign language interpreter with the wonderful name of Mark Riddle. Is there anyone in this audience for whom sign language interpretation is crucial to understanding the proceedings? If so, would you please identify yourself? If not, we will let Mark enjoy the rest of the evening. And thank you very much. And now, to introduce the substantive part of the program, I give you the Librarian of Congress, Jim Billington.
Thank you very much. We have a very heroic Director of Scholarly Programs who's here to remind you that the age of physical heroism is not entirely past. It is a great pleasure as Librarian of Congress to welcome you to the third occasion upon which the Rebekah Johnson Bobbitt National Prize for Poetry has been awarded. Among the newly established and escalating prizes now awarded for poetry, this one is the only one awarded by an institution of the federal government, so that it's national in sponsorship as well as in scope. As many of you know, right after the war, the library administered the Bollingen Prize and awarded one to Mr. Ezra Pound, which created quite an uproar, and an explicit congressional prohibition against our awarding any prizes, which I'm happy to say that Congress collaborated in repealing soon after I became librarian, and we were thereby enabled to resume not only the administration of the Poet Laureateship, as escalating up from its previous consultantship, but also this really quite unique and I think wonderful prize. It has its origins in the Library of Congress, as I believe Philip Bobbitt will describe, is also described, a great love story that has its origins within the walls of this institution, and is described to some extent in your program. We're very pleased and proud to be custodian of this prize. It's awarded, the Rebekah Johnson Bobbitt Prize, awarded in even-numbered years. It recognizes the most distinguished book of poetry written by an American and published during the preceding 2 years. That is, during 1992 and 1993 for this year's prize. This is the third award, the first having gone to James Merrill, and the second having been shared by Louise Gluck and Mark Strand. The deed of gift establishes a four-person committee, including the Poet Laureate and the Librarian of Congress, a critic nominated by the Bobbitt family, and a publisher named by the Academy of American Poets. That group in turn selects 3 independent jurors, and this year the jurors were Michael Harper, Robert Haas, and Helen Vendler. Philip Bobbitt, who is the Baker and Botts Professor of Law at the University of Texas, is a distinguished legal scholar. He's written, among other works, Tragic Choices in 1979, Constitutional Fate in 1982, and Constitutional Interpretation in 1991. He served as legal counsel to a Senate Select Committee and as counsel on international law at the Department of State. Tonight he is with us primarily to represent the Bobbitt family and also as a dedicated, knowledgeable reader of poetry. We're grateful to him for this wonderful connection with a distinguished family and with a prize of which we're very happy to be the custodians. It's my pleasure to turn the proceedings over to Phil Bobbitt.
I'm very happy to come again to the Library of Congress, for in a way I owe my very existence to this remarkable institution. As the librarian just told you, it was here that my parents first met more than 50 years ago when they were students. My father had won a scholarship to George Washington University and had taken the train here from Mineola, Texas. My mother was a graduate student in library science. They were both working in the cataloging department. She was engaged to be married to someone else, and so, but for that propinquity provided by the Library of Congress, my father would not have been able to win her over, carry her back to Texas, and start the family who I represent tonight. You might be interested in a few words about the woman for whom this prize is named. Let me say at once that my mother did not write poetry, nor would it be fair to say that she loved poetry, if by that is meant someone who likes poetry the way Will Rogers liked people. My mother liked some poetry and loved some poetry and ignored a lot of poetry. She was tall and witty and would never have been mistaken for anyone else. It is said that once when someone admired the buttons on her blouse, she plucked them off and spontaneously just gave them to her, just like that. She had as many volumes of Ogden Nash as she did of Browning. She was very frank. She had a lovely smile. She kept her friends. She would have been delighted to be here tonight because she loved a good party with interesting guests. You might say my mother took delight in life and found in poetry an occasion for that delight. There were not enough hours to exhaust her capacity for joy. Perhaps poetry, with its great economy and compression of meaning, was a compensation for the unavoidable shortness of such a life. I want you to think of her as she was when she worked here. One of her suitors had bribed the orchestra leader at the Shoreham to strike up the Yellow Rose of Texas when she came into the ballroom. I'd like you to think of her not as memorialized, but as a young woman, a librarian who loved to dance, loved champagne, and sometimes really loved poetry. It is especially satisfying for me, too, to be here on the third award of this prize. The first award in 1990 was an historic occasion for reasons that the librarian has alluded to. History turns on such points, which are by definition singular. The second award took that point and made it a line. The project had been brought to life and sustained. Now, the third award does something that merely two could not. It gives shape. We know now what sort of prize this is. It is the sort of prize that poets like Ammons and Glick and Strand and James Merrill win. That is, it is a serious award whose shape is one of great distinction. The final observation I would like to make echoes something else that the librarian said. This is the only national prize for poetry, by which I mean the only prize given on behalf of this country. It is well to remember that we are not a nation in the usual sense of sharing a common ethno-linguistic background, nor do we share a common religious unity. We are united by culture and culture alone. When the American nation honors a poet and a poet's work, we strike a medallion made out of that which binds us, a truer coin of this realm than anything minted out of metal. There are many wonderful prizes in the arts, but this national prize has a special significance because it comes from no one group in particular, but comes from all of us. I am especially pleased to introduce the poet laureate, Rita Dove, who will say a few words about A.R. Ammons. I feel I'm turning over this podium to a succession of national treasures, and I feel much blessed.
Thank you very much, and it was such a lovely tribute to your mother, who I sure would be glad to be here tonight, and I'm sure we would have been happy to have her here to celebrate poetry and life, because poetry is life. Your program has some biographical data on A.R. Ammons, but I think it bears repeating because we are truly here tonight to celebrate a national treasure. And I think that one's accomplishments can't be trumpeted enough. As you know, A.R. Ammons was born in North Carolina, Whiteville to be precise, and educated at Wake Forest College, where he earned a Bachelor of Science degree, and then the University of California at Berkeley, where he studied English literature. He's been many things: an elementary school principal, an executive in a glass-making firm, and then he joined the faculty at Cornell University in 1964, where he holds the Goldwin Smith Professor of Poetry chair. With a literary career spanning 40 years and approximately 19 books, I think, at last count, Mr. Ammons is no stranger to honors. Not only is he one of the early recipients of the MacArthur Grant, but he also received the 1975 Bollingen Prize for his book titled Sphere, the Form of Emotion. the 1982 National Book Critics Circle Award for A Coast of Trees, and 2 National Book Awards. The first one in 1973 for his collected poems, and the second just last year for Garbage. And tonight's reading marks a celebration of this most recent feather in Mr. Ammons' cap, the Rebekah Johnson Bobbitt National Prize for Poetry. In Garbage, his book-length meditative poem, A.R. Ammons trains his Renaissance eye on the littered landscape of the modern world, its accumulated clutter and non sequiturs, its brief ecstasies and niggling doubts frittered away by the deadening detail of dailiness. Quote, "Since words were introduced here, things have gone poorly for the planet," he declares, a wry irreverence which belies his essential seriousness. For life, he claims, and I quote, "Life is like a poem. The moment it begins to end. The tension this establishes makes every move and moment, every gap and stumble, every glide and rise significant." He is as committed to the living world as he is to the vigil of language. A.R. Ammons wants nothing less than to be, quote, "engaged with the ongoing." In praising Garbage for the 1994 Bobbitt Prize, juror Helen Wendler commented, A.R. Ammons writes, networks of words intricate as the realities they represent. In Garbage, the realities are death, desecration, and despair, and Ammons's volatile currents of language unfailingly provide that network. It is the burning fire in the town dump, dominated by the bulldozer and its driver, a place where matter becomes energy once more, and where our savage afflictions find, quote, "the sweet seed of new roots," unquote, that become Ammons's symbol of cosmic recycling. In Garbage, the divine comedy of extinction, as well as its tragedy, is Ammons's inexhaustible subject. Elsewhere, the poet writes, "If you will sit with me in the light of speech, I will sit with you." Tonight we have the rare and unmitigated pleasure of being here to bask in that light. Please join me in welcoming the winner of the 1994 Rebekah Johnson Bobbitt National Prize for Poetry, Mr. A.R. Ammons.
Thank you so much. I have them on. This poem came from a single impression. My wife and I were driving back from Florida, where her mother lived in South Miami, and I happened to look to my right and saw a hill of a landfill, I suppose, an artificial mountain. And it reminded me of the ziggurats of Sumeria, the pyramids of Egypt, the Mayan temples, and I thought, well, perhaps this is the symbol for our time, sacred and secular. And for a couple of years, the idea stirred in mind, and then one day I decided to sit down and write it. And I'm going to read briefly for you, but if time permits, of the 18 sections, I thought I would read 4, 5, and 15. I won't keep you unduly. Scientists plunge into matter looking for the matter, but the matter lessens, and look too far into expands away. It was insubstantial all along. That is, boulders bestir. They are, quote, alive with motion and space. There is a riddling reality where real hands grasp each other in the muff, but toward both extremes the reality wears out, wears thin, becomes a reality realityless. This is satisfactory, providing permanent movement and staying, provided the stratum essential with an essential air, the poles thick and thin, the middles at interchange. The spreader rakes a furrow open and lights a drying edge. A priestly plume rises, a signal, smoke like flies intermediating between orange peel and buzzing blur. Is a poem about garbage garbage? Or will this abstract, hollow junk seem beautiful and necessary as just another offering to the high assimilations? That means up on top, where the smoke is, the incinerations of sin, corruption, misconstruction pass through the purification of flame. Old deck chairs, crippled aluminum lawn chairs, lemon crates with busted slats or hinges, strollers with whacking or spinningly idle wheels, stub ends of hot dogs, clumps go out, rain sulls deep coals, wind slams flickers so flat they lose the upstanding of updraft and stifle to white lingo. But oh, in a sense, and in an intention, the burning's forever. Oh, eternal flame, principle of the universe, without which mere heaviness and gray rust prevail. Dance, peopling the centers and distances, the faraway galactic slurs even, luminescences, plasmas, those burns, the same principle. But here on the heights, terns and flies avoid the closest precincts of flame, the terrifying transformations, the disappearances of anything of interest, morsel, gobbet, trace of maple syrup, fat worm. Addling intensity at the center, where only special clothes and designated offices allay the risk, the pure center. But down on the lowest propinquations, the laborsome, loaded vessels whine like sails in too much wind up the long ledges, the whines a harmony, singing away the end of the world or spelling it in, a monstrous surrounding of gathering. The putrid, the cast off, the used, the mucked up, all arriving for final assessment, for the toting up in tonnage, the separations of wet and dry, returnable and gone for good, the sanctifications, the burn-throughs, ash-free, merely a permanent twang of light, a dwelling music, remaining. How to be blessed are the mechanisms, procedures that carry such changes. The garbage spreader gets off his bulldozer and approaches the fire. He stares into it as into eternity, the burning edge of beginning and ending, the catalyst of going and becoming. And all thoughts of his paycheck and beer belly, even all thoughts of his house and family, and the long way he has come to be worthy of his watch, fall away. And he stands in the presence of the momentarily everlasting, the air about him sacrosanct, purged of the crawling vines and dense vegetation of desire, nothing between perception and consequence here. The Arctic terns move away from the still machine, and light strikes their wings and round, a fluttering, a whirling rows of wings, and it seems that terns' slender wings and finely tipped tails look so airy and yet so capable that they must have been designed after angels, or angels after them. The lizard family produced man in the winged air. Man as what he might be or might have been, neuter, guileless, a feathery hem. The bulldozer man picks up a red bottle that turns purple and green in the light and pours out a few drops of stale wine, and yellow jackets burr in the bottle, sung drunk, the singing not even puzzled when he tosses the bottle way down the slopes, the still air being flown in the bottle, even as the bottle dives through the air. The bulldozer man thinks about that and concludes that everything is marvelous, what he should conclude, and what everything is. On the deep down slopes, he realizes, the light inside the bottle will, over the weeks, change the yellow jackets, unharmed, having left lost, not an aromatic vapor of wine left, the air percolating into and out of the neck of the suns, heat rises and falls. All is one, one all. Hallelujah. He gets back up on his bulldozer and, shaking his locks, backs the bulldozer up. That was part 4. Didn't last too long, did it? Five is not much longer. Dew shatters into rivulets on crunched cellophane as the newly started bulldozer jars a furrow off the mesa, smoothing and packing down, flattening the way calmers break flat into speed up the strand. Unpleasant food strings down the slopes, and rats' hard tails whirl, whacking trash. I don't know anything much about garbage dumps. I've never climbed one. I don't know about the smells. Do mask, scent? Or is there a deodorizing mask? The commissioner of sanitation, in a bug-black caddy, hearse long, glisters creepy up the ziggurat. At the top, his chauffeur pops out and opens the big back door for him. He goes over a few feet away, puts a stiff salute hand to his forehead, and surveys the distances in all depths. The bird's shadows lace his white sleeve. He rises to his toes as a lifting zephyr from the sea lofts a salt shelf of scent. He approves. He extends his arm in salute to the noisy dozer's operator, waves back and forth, counseling out any intention to speak, re-beholds Florida's longest vistas, gets back into the big buggy, and runs up all the windows, trapping, though, a nuisance of flies. Or would he have run the windows down? Or would someone else have? Not out there. Strike that. Rightness, at any rate, like a benediction, settles on the ambience. All is proceeding. Funding will be continued. This work will not be abandoned. This mound can rise higher. Things are in order when heights are acknowledged. The lows ease into place. The wives get back from the laundromat. The husbands hose down the hubcaps. And the searingly blank pressures of weekends crack away hour by hour in established time. In your end is my beginning. The operator waves back to the commissioner, acknowledging his understanding and his submission to benign authority, and falls to thinking of his wife, nay, many fewer. A woman of abrupt appetites and strict morals. A woman who wants what she wants legally, largely as a function of her husband's particulars. A closet queen, Minnie hides her cardboard gold-foiled crown to wear in parade about the house when nobody's home. She is so fat people like to be near her, and her husband loves every bit of her, every bit, round enough to get to. And wherever his dinky won't reach, he finds something else that will. I went up the road a piece this morning at 10 to Pleasant Grove for the burial of Ted's ashes. Those above ground care. Those below don't. The sun was terribly hot, and the words of poems read out loud settled down like minnows in the shallows for the moment of silence, and had their gaps and fractures filled up and healed quiet. Into the post hole went the irises and handholds of dirt. Spring brings thaw, and thaw brings the counterforce of planted ashes, which may not rise again, not as anything recognizable as what they leach away from. Oh, yes, the matter goes on, turning into this and that, never the same thing twice. But what about the spirit? Does it die in an instant, being nothing in an instant out of matter? Or does it hold on to some measure of time, not just the eternity in which it is not, but does death go on being death for 1 billion years? This one fact put down is put down forever, is it? or for forever, forever to be a part of the changes about it. Switches in the Earth's magnetic field, asteroid collisions, tectonic underplays, to be molten and then not molten, again and again? When does a fact end? What does one do with this gap from just yesterday or just this morning to 55 billion years, to infinity? The Spirit was forever and is forever, the residual and informing energy. But here what concerns us is this manifestation, this man, this incredible flavoring and building up of character and éclat, gone, though forever, in a moment only, a local event, infinitely unrepeatable. The song of the words subsides, the shallows drift away, the people turn to each other and away, motors start and the driveways clear, and the single fact is left alone to itself, to have its first night under the stars, but to be there now for every star that comes. We go away who must ourselves come back at last to stay. Tears when we are helpless are our only joy. But while I was away this morning, Mike, the young kid who does things for us, cut down the thrift with his weed eater. Those little white flowers, more like weed-sized than more than likely, sometimes called cliff rose. Also got the grass out of the front ditch, now too wet to mow, slashed. The dispositional axis is not supreme, how tedious, and not a fiction, how clever, but plain. Greatness flows through the lowly, and a fact, like as not. This is part 15. Am I hearable? Oh, good. What are we to think of the waste, though? The sugar maple seeds on the blacktop are so dense, the seed heads crushed by tires, the wings stuck wet, they hold the reins, so there's no walkway dry. So many seeds, and not one will make a tree, excuse the expression. What of so much possibility, all impossibility? How about the one who finds alcohol at 11, drugs at 17, death at 32? How about the little boy on the street who with puffy, smooth face and slit eyes reaches up to you for a handshake? Supposing politics swings back like a breeze and sails tanks through a young crowd? What about the hopes withered up and screams like crops in sandy winds? How about the letting out of streams of blood where rain might have sprinkled into road pools? Are we to identify with the fortunate who see the energy of possibility as its necessary brush with impossibility, who define meaning only in the blasted landfalls of no meaning, who can in safety call evil essential to the differentiations of good? Or should we wail that the lost are lost, that nothing can be right until they no longer lose themselves, until we've found charms to call them back? Are we to take no comfort when so much discomfort turns here and there helplessly for help? Is there, in other words, after the balances are toted up, is there a streak of light defining the cutting edge as celebration? Clematis, which looks as dead and drained in winter as baling wire, transports in spring such leaves and plush blooms. I walked down the hall to the ward wing, surrounded on 3 sides with windows light, and there were the other diabetics like minnows in the pool head of a tidal rising, sat my father, slumped, gussied up with straps, in a wheelchair. A catheter leading to the little fuel tank hung underneath, urine the color of gasoline. My father, like the others, drawn down half asleep, mulling over his wheels. Where, I thought, hope of good is gone, evil becomes the deliverer, and more evil, to get one through to the clearing where presence, now pain, enters oblivion. My father roused himself and took some hope in me, but then left me back alone. At a point in evil, evil changes its clothes, and death, with a soft smile, crooks its finger to us. A taking by death, leaving the living bereft. Such a mixture, where does a steady formulation settle down? What integration of wisdom holes scoured by the bottoms of bottoms? Questioned, I mean, by nibbling exception and branching direction. Every balance overbalances. Judiciousness loses the excitement of error. Realizing that there is no safety is safety. The other side of anything is worth nearly as much as the side. The difference so slight, in fact, that one goes out to see if it is there. I want a curvature, like the arising of a spherical section, a sweep that doesn't break down from arc into word, image, definition, story, thesis, but all these assimilated to an arc of silence, an interrelation permitting motion and stillness. I want to see furrows of definition, both the centerings of furrow and the clumpy outcastings beyond. I do not want to be caught inside for clarity. I want clarity to be a smooth, long bend, disallowing no complexity and coming clean. Why do I want this? Complexity without confusion, clarity without confinement, time and time, not time splintered. If you are not gone at a certain age, your world is, or it is shriveled to a few people who know what you know. Aunts and uncles with their histories blanked out, the thick tissue of relationships erased into one of emptiness, or maybe your cousins too are gone, and the world has starved to a single peak, you, and what you know alone, with no one else in the world to nod, recognizing what you say and recall without explanation. So, have your choice to leave the world or have it leave you. Either way you choose will bring the same result, nothingness and the vanishment of what was. Over and over the world rolls in this wise, so much so that people stricken with these knowledges think the aspiration to win, to be remembered, to be left hanging, dibbling in the minds of those continuing. Well, I don't know whether that sentence ended anywhere or not, but I'll continue. But life is not first for being remembered, but for being lived. How quaint and sad the lives of those who have lived but are gone. The vacant sadness of two eternities pressed together, squeezing them dry to non-degradable remains. Trash. The meaning, the tears, loves, sweet hand-holdings, all the fears, jealousies, hangings, burnings, throwaways, obsolescences that plug up the circulations today, burdening the living with guilty obligations of memory and service. To have the curvature, though, one needs the concisions of the local, contemplations such as how to slice a banana for breakfast oatmeal, 14 thick or 33 thin events, the chunky substance of 14 encounters or the flavor availabilities in limp circles. Fly the definite lest it lock you in. Have solvent by should the imperative devise you a vice. See a spread of possibilities, not an onion plot. The juggler has twice as many balls as hands because it's all up in the air. Keep it up in the air, boundingly, like ephemera at dusk. You know those flies that bound and globe-like. I saw in North Carolina morning flies mid-air like floating stones, the dew heavy, the sun blood red, a road dipping round a pine grove down a hill to a pond, the spillway clogged with cattails, bent with breezes and with red wings a wilding day. A crippled old farmer up early with his dog, noon likely to melt tar. A bench long of old blacks at the crossroads, gas station. Dog fennel high on the wood's edge, some scraggly roast near corn used up, tomato plants sprawled out, become vines. Morning, gentlemen. How you all doing? These bitty events, near pangs commonplace on this planet so strangely turned out. We mustn't take on so, but let the music sway, the rhetoric ride, the garbage heave. For if we allow one solid cast of grief to flip and filter away into all the trinklets it might go, we would be averaged down to a multiple diminishment, like acceptance. But we mean to go on and go on till we unwind the winding of our longest road, when, we presume, the nothingness we step to will mirror treasures we leave, a strange mirror, everything in our lives having taken root in love, the sequences having become right because that is the way they had to run. But then, for the trouble of love, we may be so tired that indifference will join ours to the hill's indifference, and the broad currents of the deep, and the high windings of the sky, and we may indeed see the ease beyond our understanding, because till now, always beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was indeed the garbage heaving. And it makes us want to go back again and again to those lines. There is a reception outside for all of us, and there'll be an opportunity for you to talk to Mr. Ammons and to acquire garbage. And we thank all of you for being here, and most especially Bill Bobbitt